Hi guys, here is my extract for World Book Day. It's called Beyond the Limits. There was no warning. A slab tilted under the sledge, which pulled me backwards. I fell on my back and slid down the slab. The noise that followed was the one I most hate to hear in the Arctic, a splash. The sledge was in the sea. I kicked out with my skis and flowered at the slab with both hands. One ski boot plunged into the sea and one gloved hand found an edge of a static slab. Taking a firm grip, I pulled my wet foot and ski out of the water and managed to unfasten my harness. I was already beginning to shiver. I squirmed around until I could sit on a flatter slab to inspect the sledge in the gloom. It was underwater, but not sinking. 70 days worth of food and 30 of fuel were on that sledge, and the communications gear. Without it, the expedition was over. A nearby slab crashed into the sea. The ice was moving. I had to save the sledge quickly. Soon I would be dangerously cold. I pushed up my jacket sleeve and took off my outer mitt. In retrospect, I may have been better off keeping it on, but I had to feel for the submerged rope. For a minute or so, I could not find the snag. Then, by jiggling the rope sharply, it came free. I pulled hard and the sledge rose to the surface. My wet hand was numb, but I could not replace the mitt until the sledge was out of the sea. Gradually, the prow rose on a slab, and water cascaded off its canvas cover. Minutes later, the sledge was on dry land. I danced about like a madman. Both my mitts were back on, and I used my cold hand revival technique to restore life to my numb fingers. This involves a fast windmill motion with the fingers. Usually, the blood returns painfully to all my fingers. This time, it did not. I took off my mitt. My fingers were ramrod stiff and ivory white. They might as well have been wooden. I knew that if I let my good hand go, even partially numb, I would be unable to erect the tent and start the cooker, which I needed to do quickly, for I was shivering. I returned to the big sledge. The next 30 minutes was a nightmare. The sledge cover zip-jammed. Precious minutes went by before I could free it and start erecting the tent. My teeth were chattering violently and my good hand was numb. I had to get the cooker going in minutes or it would be too late. I crawled into the partially erect tent, closed its door zip and began a 20-minute battle to start the cooker. I could not use the petrol lighter with my fingers, but I found some matches I could hold in my teeth. Starting an extremely cold petrol cooker involves carefully priming so that just the right amount of fuel seeps into the pad below the fuel jet. Using my teeth and a numb index finger, I finally worked the pump enough to squirt fuel onto the pad, but was slow in shutting the valve. When I applied the match, a 3-foot flame reached to the roof. Luckily, I had a flame lining installed, so the tent was undamaged and the cooker was alight. One of the best moments of my life. Slowly and painfully, some life came back into the fingers of my good hand. An hour later, with my body warm again, I unlaced my wet boot. Only 2 toes had been affected. Soon they would exhibit big blood blisters and lose their nails, but they had escaped frostbite. I was in no doubt as to the fate of my bad hand. I had seen enough frostbites to realise I was in trouble. I had to go to hospital quickly to save my fingers. I set out in great trepidation. 5 hours later, I was back on the ice shelf. I erected the tent properly and spent 3 hours massaging my good hand and wet foot over the cooker. From there, the journey to the hut took forever. Once I fell asleep on the move and woke in a trough of soft snow well away from my intended route. When I came to the hut, I prepared my communications gear. I spoke to Morag Howe in Resolute Bay. She promised to evacuate me the following day. The fingers on my left hand began to grow great liquid blisters. The pain was bad, so I raided my medical stores for drugs. The next day, I found an airstrip near the hut and marked its ends with kerosene rags. When I heard the ski plane, I lit the rags, and an hour later I was on my way to Eureka. 36 hours after I was at Ottawa General Hospital, watching as a surgeon stripped skin and sliced blisters from my fingers. For the next 2 weeks, I received daily treatment in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. Back in England, I allowed the damaged tissue to slowly heal in readiness for the end knuckles of the thumb and each finger to be amputated. I took penicillin for 4 months to keep gangrene out of the open cracks where the damaged but live flesh met the dead and blackened finger ends. By the end of June, I was able to saw my dead finger ends off with a fret saw. This helped the new stump areas heal in readiness for final surgery by the plastic surgeon. I suppose, over 26 years of polar travel, the frostbite odds were always narrowing. This time they caught up with me. It's a shame because everything was looking good, but there is never any point in crying over spilt milk. In order to win at some of the big ones, you always lose at others along the way. The key is to learn from the failures and then keep going. That was my extract. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it.